Our next speaker says it's important to remember that diversity and equity are two very different things. She spent the last 30 years working in grassroots community organizing and working with community-based organizations across the country. She's the executive director and a member of the board of directors of the National Association of Latino Arts and Culture. Please welcome a SphinxCon founding partner, María De Leon.
Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you, and I want to thank Aaron and Sphinx for the invitation. I look forward to the conversations that will happen later today and over the next few days about diversity, about equity. And I'd like to begin first as we talk about the vibrancy of art and the innovation that happens in our communities. Just to tell you, for those of you that are not familiar with NALAC, we are a national service organization that provides support to Latino artists and Latino organizations working across all disciplines. We provide professional development, leadership training, grants for artistic production, and we do a lot of advocacy work, and we work across networks with other communities of color. We work closely with Native communities, with Native Hawaiian communities, with African American communities, Asian communities, and other marginalized communities across the country to really begin to advance the conversation about equity beyond just diversity. But I'd like to just let you see some of the diverse and beautiful work, innovative, traditional, contemporary, that's happening out in Latino communities. For example, the Borderlands Theater and Círculo Teatral are doing a partnership around theater, and we support that. Calpulli Mexican Dance Company in New York is doing beautiful, vibrant work. Filmmakers such as Betty Bastidas from Brooklyn, Contratiempo from Los Angeles doing beautiful contemporary dance. Quinteto Latino, which is from California, partnering with many other organizations, music organizations across the country, and other many diverse practices that our artists are creating in communities and helping to shape community. And today we wanted to talk about equity and how we operationalize that in arts and culture. How do we really make it happen? How do we make it happen now? How do we begin to work around that? And I want to tell you just a little story about an urban center. And this is true. There's an urban center in the southwestern United States. This city is a majority city with Latinos making up 64% of the population. The Latino arts and culture sector there include organizations and artists creating vibrant and innovative work that maintains and promotes the unique cultural characteristics and authenticity that make this southwestern city an international destination point. The city's Latino arts sector serves diverse communities and provides opportunities for cultural participation for all citizens. For over 30 years, these organizations have been advancing greater diversification of artistic and cultural expression and uplifting the voices of those that are underrepresented in the arts today. These organizations have contributed to the city's economic growth. They've helped create jobs, promoted international cultural exchange, and through the power of arts and culture, these organizations have played a key role in transforming this urban area into a vibrant, created cultural center. Collectively, thousands of original works of art have been produced, attracting millions of audience members to this city. However, if you compare the public support these 7 Latino organizations receive, compare it to what the 8 mainstream institutions receive, you see the inequity. And all you have to do is look at the blue lines. Since 1980, you can see how the support, has really not increased by a great deal. Will diversity alone by itself change this framework? No. Any references to diversity and to equity need to actively translate into funding policies and grant-making practices for the equitable distribution of resources to the entire sector, to the entire arts sector of color, not only to Latino communities. And I wonder, we know that this is a pattern across communities here in the country. And I would just like to ask, do you know what your own community looks like? The public funding in your own community? Do you know how it impacts communities of color in your own community? This city's, the touristic attractions are promoted and based on the Mexican culture of this city. However, it is a ghost culture that interprets and appropriates the living culture without the first voice of that authentic community. While we have made many advances over the years, there's a lot more to do. And I think all of us together need to make a commitment to cultural equity, inclusion, and innovative engagement of diverse communities. Will the public and private sector establish thoughtful and creative ways to adapt to challenges and opportunities, to address and change entrenched inequality? Will we together create new policies and systems that will advance a fair distribution of resources? Will anyone dare create equity funding formulas based on an organization's operating budget and assets to invest more resources in building the capacity of organizations with fewer resources? These organizations in this city, in a city that's majority Mexican American, are serving a vast, vast and growing community. They are serving children, they are serving elders, and they're serving everyone across the community, not only Latinos. And yet, there's not any type of conscious effort to really invest in these organizations. And these organizations are really advancing and building community, advancing the creativity across communities. And I want to tell you a little story that demonstrates how arts and culture have been at the center of community organizing. Arts and culture have always been integrated into community building. And this is a true story. Among the vanquished, we find strength and courage at the heels of our pain and suffering. After having voluntarily served his country in World War II, Mr. Lopez returned to his rural community in South Texas, an honorable soldier, a Mexicano Americano, who took to heart the values of his tradition and the land in which he was born, the country he loved. He was in the infantry and served in North Africa, Sicily, among other places. He met a beautiful woman when he returned years later, who turned out to be his wife. On one of their first dates, he invited her to the theater to watch a movie. He met his bride-to-be in impeccable fashion, donning his military uniform, and it is undeniable and unquestionable that Mrs. Lopez arrived decked stunningly and gorgeously as ever. On such a fateful first date, I can only imagine this grand sense of the vastness of the future that lay ahead of them, of possibility, of hope, of the beginnings of falling into a love that would last well more than a half a century. And as they entered that theater and sat in the front to enjoy a movie, they were asked to move to the back of the theater. They were asked to remove the dignity that they wore. He, a fighter for his land, they were asked to sit in segregation by a theater owner, and the police, they were asked to accept to being less than. And because Mr. Lopez had pride and a strong sense of who he was, they left. But that's not even the end of the story. This moment of pain and suffering did not break the relationship with the woman he would love and raise a family and raise a community with. The experience cemented their love for each other, sealed their story of their future. And even more extraordinarily, this experience, building upon the reality of injustice and oppression and inequality, fueled Mr. and Mrs. Lopez to do more for their people and for their community and for their family. And always, arts and culture were at the center, were integrated into the work they did in community. Many years later, in the 50s, Mr. and Mrs. Lopez were part of a community fight to desegregate the local school system. Later in the 70s, they and other families led a walkout, a school walkout due to the unjust treatment of Chicano students. And arts, again, were always central to community organizing work. Music, theater, dance, storytelling helped the community envision a new future. Mr. and Mrs. Lopez were warriors for social justice, and this made them stand up for what was right, always. They were masters at turning adversity into determination and strength. And as such, they are the gauge by which your family and their community measure their moral compass. They are the true north. The Latino, African American, Asian, Native American people are the story of resistance and change, and arts and culture is at the core of our work. Like Mr. Lopez and so many others, will you join in the work to bring equity and justice into the arts? Will you help make this a reality? If we work collectively, we can achieve this. Maybe not here, maybe not right now, today, but just a little further down the road. Thank you.
We have a very special performance for you. During their annual national tour, the Washington Post praised their performance for combining zest, attention to detail, tight ensemble, and deeply amorous tone quality. After their performance at Carnegie Hall, the New York Times said they displayed all the hallmarks of a first-rate string ensemble. Led by the critically acclaimed Catalyst Quartet, this conductorless ensemble of soloists has been presenting innovative repertoire in countless venues nationwide, inspiring new and traditional audiences and challenging the stereotypes through artistic excellence and commitment to diversity. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome one of the nation's most dynamic professional classical ensembles, Sphinx Virtuosi, along with its composer in residence, Jesse Montgomery.
Good evening. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the Sphinx staff who make this important conference happen, and especially thank you to Xavier Verna, who I know works very diligently to coordinate all of the events that you'll be attending this weekend. Thank you, Xavier. My name is Jessie Montgomery. I'm a violinist and composer. And I'm proud to say I've been a member of the Sphinx family since 1999. Yes. Jared, can you hold my bow? Thanks. It has been a wonderful weekend so far of reunions and outstanding performances. Congratulations again to the junior laureates for your amazing performance this afternoon. Thank you so much for your artistry. Amazing. I have friends in the group here. Okay, thank you. I thought I would begin with a short introduction of my history and affiliation with the Sphinx organization and how I came to stand before you today. I first competed in 1999 as a junior semifinalist, of course not realizing at the time how significant a role Sphinx would play in my musical development in the years to come. I had such a genuinely fun experience making new friends and networking that I came back in subsequent years to compete 3 more times as a senior laureate, senior division finalist and also laureate, which led then, of course, to numerous other opportunities within Sphinx's programming, such as performances in many of their outreach programs in both Michigan and in my hometown of New York City. I serve on the faculty for the Sphinx Performance Academy. I've performed in the Sphinx Symphony. I am a proud member of both the Catalyst Quartet and the Sphinx Virtuosi. And then there's my most recent appointment as the Sphinx Virtuosi Composer in Residence. So, as the saying goes, I am Sphinx. One of the main goals of the Sphinx Virtuosi Composer in Residence program is to add new works to the repertoire that further diversify the palette of American music. This is an opportunity for all of us to ask some important questions. These questions will affect how we see ourselves moving forward as classical musicians in the 21st century. What is American classical music today? What does it sound like? What does it look like? Whose story are we telling, and how do we want to tell it? And finally, who is listening? These questions help us envision ways of engaging directly with our audiences through the music we create. And they help us reflect on our own backgrounds as they relate to our various listeners. Our audiences are changing. They aren't just getting older, they're also getting younger. They are reflective of a wider range of cultures. And I'm not just being an optimist. I've seen it on tour with the Sphinx Virtuosi every year for the past 6 years. These are the people we are speaking to. And it is thanks to Sphinx's efforts in audience development that many of these new audiences do exist. Through the collaboration between myself, Sphinx, and the Sphinx Virtuosi, we will work to develop new repertoire that is culturally reflective and relevant, that will help to keep these fresh, young audiences engaged and looking forward to what a life in music has to offer them. I want to thank Afa Siddiqui and Aaron Dworkin especially for providing this invaluable support system and for being like a second family in my musical life. And also Linda and Stuart Nelson for their commitment and their support of the inaugural Sphinx Virtuosi Composer in Residence program. And of course, a humongously huge thank you to the Sphinx Virtuosi for your generosity, your musicianship, and for being the familia that I couldn't live without, I think. Thank you. A quick word about the piece we'll play for you. It's called Strum, and it's become a bit of an anthem for the Sphinx Virtuosi and for the Catalyst Quartet. It was performed extensively on our tour last fall and remains a staple in the Catalyst Quartet season offerings. I wrote it originally in 2006 for cello quintet. The piece went through several revisions, resulting in the final version you'll hear this evening. So, a little bit more about that is it's actually based on some American folk-like kind of playful melodies. And at the time that I was writing the piece, I was learning the Dvorak American String Quartet, so you might hear a little bit of that influence in there as well. So thank you all again, and here we have Sphinx Virtuosi with Strum. Thank you very much.
Well, that wraps things up for the time being. If you are looking for places to go to dinner, there's a great list in your program. We will reconvene here at 8 o'clock this evening for the Arthur L. Johnson Memorial Series featuring this year's award recipient, Simone Shaheen. We'll see you back here at 8.